My name is Manfred Helber and I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in the category Cloud and Data Center. I assume you already know that we have several Azure benefits and Azure workloads we can use exclusively in Azure and on Azure Stack HCI. This is one of these great values of Azure Stack HCI, that we can run Azure workloads on Azure Stack HCI. And some of these workloads are available via the Azure Benefits we will configure in a few minutes in the live demo in Windows Admin Center. For example, the Azure Edition for Azure Stack HCI. Azure Edition is a specific version of Windows Server. It's the Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition with extensions like SMB over Quick, it's an ultra-fast network transport, the hot patch feature for patching of servers without nearly any downtime, and we have the extended networking for Azure connectivity. We have the free extended security updates for Windows Server 2008, 2008 R2, SQL Server 2008 R2, Windows Server 2012 R2 when they are in the end of support phase, end of October 2023, and so on. And for sure, this is a relatively new option, is alternatively to buying data center license, we can also use the pay-as-you-go option. So several of these benefits on Azure Stack HCI version 21H2 will be activated via the Azure Benefit configuration in the Windows Admin Center. And we will have a look at this configuration in the next live demo, but we have also Azure Benefits, not only for the workloads, but also for the management of Azure Stack HCI. So in the version we are seeing here in my Windows Admin Center in the live demo, we already have the capabilities to connect our Windows Admin Center via a resource bridge to Azure to deploy virtual machines from the Azure portal. It's an interesting new opportunity. And for sure, also the Azure infrastructure innovations like extended GPU support and things like this, they are exclusive to Azure Stack HCI. And this is what we want to review in this live demo about Azure Stack HCI options and benefits in Windows Admin Center. Here we have a look at our demo environment we are using for nearly all of the videos. For some specific tasks, we access specific physical servers with GPUs and things like this. And for some demos, we have a different set. Here I'm using virtual machines to provide Azure Stack HCI. It's perfectly for testing, for demoing, for evaluation, for training. And for production, you would choose to use a physical certified Azure Stack HCI configuration. I have several of these physical Azure Stack HCI clusters here, but for now we want to use these configurations here. And I will start with my review in a 2-node cluster. It's this Azure Stack HCI cluster 20 here. This one I will connect to this cluster. There are many administrative tasks here in the list. If you are interested in these, let's say on-premises HCI tasks, I recommend you to review the videos from the Technical Sales Specialist series and the Deployment Specialist series. Here in the Hybrid Administrator, we will focus on the settings, and here in the settings on this Azure Stack HCI settings, because here we have some specific things related to Azure Stack HCI and to Azure Stack HCI only. So let's start here with the first thing, the Azure Stack HCI registration. We have seen this Azure Stack HCI registration in the previous module about registering Azure Stack HCI with Azure and configuring Azure Arc. Here we can see, okay, the cluster is registered, it's Azure Arc enabled, we have a connection, the last connection is up to date, we can resync this cluster here. The monitoring data is relevant because, as you know, the cluster is connected to Azure and it needs some information about the cluster for billing, but also to know if the cluster is up online and running. And here we have a log name, it's the operational log, and we have a sample rate in seconds we can configure here. If we choose for 0, we don't collect this information, but this is not recommended. The service health data is provided for setting level basic. This can be configured in the Azure portal. Here we can review the privacy settings. It's also recommended to transfer this data to Azure to provide this service health data here. Let's go to the activate Windows Server VMs, because this was about the benefit pay as you go or provide your on-premises license. So it's in Azure Stack HCI when we go to activate Windows Server VMs and we set this up. The second option, use existing Windows Server license, is not a hybrid feature. This means when I click to next, you provide your data center keys. You have licensed for your Azure Stack HCI nodes to receive unlimited virtual usage rights. So this action here activates automatic virtual machine activation on the Azure Stack HCI nodes to provide an automated activation for your virtual machines running on Azure Stack HCI. The hybrid feature is here when you go for purchase Windows Server subscription license. This is available via Azure, and here I can see my Azure subscription ID. I have a resource group where this cluster is mapped to. I have the number of the physical cores. These are only 4 here because I mentioned this is a virtual cluster. I have only a few cores in these virtual machines. And I can here via this link review what the cost will be. Actually, this is in preview, so you can check via this link how much will this cost. A new tab will open and you will be brought to this Azure Stack HCI pricing, and here you can see the pricing for Azure Stack HCI, and you can here see the pricing for the guests for the monthly fee. What here is new on this page, this was not here when we started with this videos. We now have a price here. This is new on this page. And we have an information Windows Server subscription offers a free trial within 60 days of registering your Azure Stack HCI. You will be charged with a monthly service fee after your first 60 days of using Azure Stack HCI. When you review the first videos of this series, I have also been on this page, and there we had the information. Actually, the pricing is not public because it's in preview. Now we have the situation, this is not in preview any longer here, so we can purchase it. We have a price for it, and the price is $23.25 or $23.25 per physical core per month. When we add this to this $10 per physical core per month, we have the usage for the Azure Stack HCI OS. These are the $10, and the $23.25 for the unlimited virtual usage rights, because this is for unlimited virtual usage rights. This means for my cluster, I have this 4 times, so something like $92, $93 here for the unlimited virtual usage rights, and additional $40 for Azure Stack HCI. But a great opportunity is to have the 60 days also for the virtual usage rights. So you have really 60 days for testing this, and you can decide at any time to purchase the on-premises license. The advantage of this Azure-based pricing with the Windows Server subscription is that you have all the benefits like the Azure edition of Windows Server and so on included. If you bring your own license for some of these additional features, you have to bring your own license with software assurance. For example, for the Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition. Okay, so I think this is relatively clear. Two options. One is the traditional way, you buy the license and you don't have any subscription costs. The modern way, you have the subscription, you don't have upfront costs to pay for the license, but you have the monthly costs for the unlimited virtual usage rights. Okay. Then we have a part that's called Azure Benefits. The Azure Benefits ensure that our virtual machines know that they are allowed to consume these Azure Benefits. Here we can see this looks like on present here, this nice box here, Azure Benefits. It's in preview actually, and I can turn on the Azure Benefits. And I have two choices, turn on for all existing VMs or not. I will not turn on for all existing VMs because here I can see for now, so actually in this version, you will have to manually enable benefits on each VM you create later. Okay, let's turn on the Azure Benefits. The first step creates or turns on the Azure Benefits for the cluster itself. Inside the cluster, I can turn on the Azure Benefits for dedicated virtual machines. So I can decide for virtual machine 1, virtual machine 2, virtual machine 3 to enable these Azure Benefits here. So we will come back to this configuration in a few minutes because I want to show you an alternate cluster where we see what can happen if the cluster is not completely patched. So we'll come back to this 2-node cluster here. Let's go to a 3-node cluster we have here. It's not a situation where we have dependencies to the number of nodes. So we can turn on Azure Benefits in 2-node, 3-node, 4-node, 5-node. What here is the situation when I will go to the settings of the Azure Stack HCI cluster here. And when I also have the Azure registration, this should be green, yes, and it's up to date, everything is fine. When I here go to the Azure Benefits, it's loading. This message is from the other cluster. I have the same picture, but it says here, install the latest updates and then refresh this page. This is an Azure Stack HCI cluster. This is relatively new deployed, but maybe not the latest updates are installed on this cluster. So if you see a message here in this Azure Stack HCI region, and this may happen because we are working with hybrid services. So these topics here that are related here with this here usually use some cloud services here. And as you know, the cloud services are updated on a regular basis. We have an as a service model here. And this as a service means that we have continuously development of the features in the cloud and continuously new features. We have monthly updates for Azure Stack HCI. And it might happen that you see some new features here where you will not be able to consume them or to use them till you updated your cluster. But it's an easy thing to update the cluster. I will not complete the update here completely. I only will showcase you how this works. If you want to get details about this, you can review the video module part 16, updating Azure Stack HCI clusters, in the deployment specialist video series. I only want to show you it's really easy. I can add the cluster aware updating role to this cluster here. This adds a specific role that ensures that this cluster is updated automatically without any downtime. I mentioned we have a 3-node cluster here in our configuration, and this 3-node cluster has some workload running. There are virtual machines on this 3-node cluster. And now my cluster-aware updating ensures that when the first host will be patched, the workload from the first host will be moved via live migration to the 2 other remaining hosts. Then the first host will be updated, will be restarted. Before this happens, the host will be put to maintenance mode. When the host is back, the maintenance mode will be removed. Then the node 2 will be put to maintenance mode. The machines will be moved via live migration to the remaining nodes and so on. So I have a full patching of the cluster with the updates I can see here. These are the updates. And I can install them. Let's see. And I don't have to do this manually. I don't have to look for the virtual machines. This information here is not an error really. I'm working on virtual machines with my cluster, and this says I don't have any hardware updates for you. Hardware updates are provided for Azure Stack HCI integrated systems. For validated nodes, this is optional. You always can install hardware updates also manually. So I will go to next and install. Now we can see we have our 3 nodes, and the updates will be installed and provided automatically. So I click on install, and I will not need to do anything manually now. I just have to wait till the update has finished. We will now switch back to the 2-node cluster to review the Azure Stack HCI settings. Maybe the update has finished here till the end of this recording, and then we will also see that now these Azure benefits are available in this Azure Stack HCI cluster with the 3 nodes where we actually couldn't use or activate the Azure benefits because of the patch level of this cluster. Now let's go back to our Azure Stack HCI cluster, the 2-node cluster, the Azure Stack HCI cluster 2-node cluster, where we activated the Azure benefits. And here we can see Azure benefits is turned on the cluster. We have actually 0 of 3 VMs activated with the Azure benefits, and it's active on both hosts, and the expiration date is in 30 days because let's check back to the Azure Stack HCI registration. Here the situation is we need minimum once every 30 days a connect to update this information. Here we could sync if we are not in sync, and usually you will have a connectivity with your cluster to Azure because of updates, of monitoring, of using the hybrid services. But if you are disconnected for 30 days, you can use everything that runs on your cluster without this Azure connectivity. For sure, if you want to consume native services out of the Azure data center, this will not work because if you are disconnected, you will not reach this. But for example, your virtual machines are completely running in disconnected state. You can create virtual machines, you can delete virtual machines, you can shut down this machine, start the machines, create volumes. When you are disconnected for more than 30 days, then you cannot create any new workloads. So for example, you cannot create new virtual machines. So let's go back to the Azure benefits here because we enabled the Azure benefits for the cluster, and I decided not to enable all the Azure benefits for my virtual machines. For the cluster, it's enabled, it's fine. For the virtual machines, I can now select dedicated machines and turn on Azure benefits for a specific virtual machine. So maybe you have machines where you don't want to use the Azure benefits, where you don't need this. Maybe, I think today we don't have any service where we have VM-based costs regarding this Azure benefits, but maybe in the future there will be something where we have VM-based costs. Today we have the costs based on the physical hosts, and so I can assume there will be reasons where you want to activate or deactivate Azure Benefits for specific servers. This is possible here. Preview channel is also part of the Azure Benefits, because if you are interested as a customer, as a partner, to see what happens in the development, then you can get started with the preview channel. You will receive the updates via update, the same process we have seen at the 3-node cluster, and where we'll have a look at when we finished with the Azure Benefits here. And we will we have the advantage when we activate the preview channel and when we really install the preview channel, that we will not be charged for this Azure Stack HCI cluster, but only if it's not in production. So we cannot use, or we are not allowed to use, from the licensing perspective, we are not allowed to use the preview channel in production environments. So it's little trade-off, but if you want to test something, if you want to evaluate, if you want to train yourself, and you don't have any subscription budget where you can charge this Azure Stack HCI cluster, you could join the preview channel. But sometimes the preview channel really provides alpha or early beta versions, so it's not always absolutely stable, but it's great to see what the development makes, what new features will be there in the next version. Okay, we have seen the Azure Benefits, the activation of the Windows Server. We have seen the service health monitoring, Azure Stack HCI registration. Now there's something relatively new. It's the resource bridge. The resource bridge is a great technology because we will see more and more features where we can use the Azure portal. Here we can read the Azure portal to provide hybrid managed services on premises on our Azure Stack HCI. So today, when I create a virtual machine, I go to virtual machines, I click on create, and I create this virtual machine locally with the Windows Admin Center with a local installation file. In combination with this resource bridge, I can use the Azure portal to create a virtual machine from the Azure portal on my Azure Stack HCI cluster based on the Azure Image Gallery. And this is great because if you know the Azure Image Gallery, we have a lot of pre-configured, always updated machines. And with the resource bridge, you will have part of this gallery on premises, because for sure, when you use the Azure portal to deploy a virtual machine on your Azure Stack HCI cluster based on an image Microsoft provides, then you need this image on your environment. Because if this installation image always is deployed to your host via the internet, in Germany, this will be very slow. I'm not sure what's the typical internet speed in your location, where you are located, but for us here in Germany, it would not be very performant. This would be not very efficient. And so we can set up this resource bridge. It's a new feature. It was not initially planned to have this in this training series because as we designed the trainings, this was not available, but we will add an additional module about the resource bridge. We will not cover this here, but there will an additional module we will add at later time to this hybrid administrator for configuring the resource bridge. And in addition, we have the Azure Arc VM set up for Azure Stack HCI. With this, we can delegate the ability to users to create and manage their own VMs on this cluster. Actually, we don't have a wizard here, but we have a link to the docs.microsoft.com documentation, how we can configure it. I assume because this is in preview, we will see a wizard for this soon. For those that use the virtual machine manager, in previous versions, it's years ago, we had in System Center Virtual Machine Manager something that was called the self-service portal. This was a locally running web-based portal. Today, we don't have the self-service portal in System Center Virtual Machine Manager. In Windows Admin Center, yes, we have a web-based portal, but we don't have self-services here. So I cannot provide Windows Admin Center in a self-service view. It's always a tool for the administrator, the Windows Admin Center. And this Azure Arc VM setup for Azure Stack HCI enables us to provide self-services via the Azure portal. So really great services, and this is not the end of the list. This list will be extended in the future, I'm absolutely sure. Maybe we will not need a configuration for each new benefit we will receive. But this is really, to mention this again, the great advantage of Azure Stack HCI, that we will be able to consume more and more services from Azure, more and more hybrid services. So as you remember, we started the update on the 3-node cluster because there we have seen that the Azure benefits were not available. So let's check the result of this update. And here we can see now all the 3 nodes are updated. Updates were applied. So hopefully there are no additional updates for now. So I will go to the settings and I will check the Azure benefits again. And here we had the situation that the Azure benefits were not available before we applied the updates. Now you can see we could also configure the Azure benefits on this cluster here that was updated. So if you have the situation that they are not available here, or you see an error message, then just go to updates. We have seen how to enable the update service and everything will be running again. So thank you for watching this video about reviewing Azure Stack HCI options and Azure benefits in Windows Admin Center. All these steps are also available in PowerShell, but I prefer the Windows Admin Center because I'm often asked for a graphical tool. You will not be able to configure any of these things in the traditional tools like Hyper-V Manager or Failover Cluster Manager. So Windows Admin Center is your tool to do this. And if you are not familiar with Windows Admin Center, I recommend you to review the video module 2 about installing and configuring Windows Admin Center.